All right. Can anybody see my screen?
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes, I can see it.
All right, thank you. So the topic of today is the fall of democracy explained. What I'd like us to do today is to compare our history and with the history of Germany in the World War One period, somewhere around there, building to World War Two. Because I believe there are similarities there. We need to have a look at them, of which I think they will be able to explain to us what is happening or what we see right now. So we're going to begin at the end of World War One. So in World War One, it was around 1918. This is when now the war is coming to an end, and Germany is exhausted. And now they sue for peace. They really wanted peace desperately at that point. They are weak. And everybody can see that Germany is losing the war. Now, this imminent defeat sparked a revolution inside Germany. So you will remember that Germany was a monarch. You have Kaiser Wilhelm II, and he's the emperor. But because of this revolution now in Germany, he was forced to abdicate the throne in November 9, 1918. He left the throne, and then this is when now we begin this period, we call it Weimar Republic. So this is when now Germany is changing its rulership. It's no more a monarch now. It's gonna be a different government. We're gonna have elections now. People are going to elect people who are going to represent themselves. It's some sort of a democracy beginning here, the Weimar Republic, right? So around there, actually 2 days after November 9, November 11, you have an armistice. Remember, there's a world war. We are at the World War One. The war is still ongoing. It has not yet ended. On November 11, there's going to be this armistice to end the fighting on land and sea and in the air. So an armistice is these initial stages when we're going to discuss a peace treaty. So it is this partial agreement, right, that we sign, then we agree upon certain terms just to end the war. But we're still going to have a proper treaty that is going to be drafted in the future. So an armistice is this initial discussions that begins before the actual treaty. So this was signed in November 11, 1918. So who were fighting? There were two parties fighting. the Entente, or we call them Allied powers. The Allied powers is France, UK, US, Russia, Italy, Japan. So they won the battle because of this armistice. And as we are saying, Germany is under pressure now. And on the other side, you had Central powers. That's Germany, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire, Bulgaria. So we are saying they were defeated in this battle. And then you're going to have the Treaty of Versailles on June 28, 1919. So basically, these are the events which are happening around 1918. The World War I is coming to an end. And you have this revolution inside Germany. And Kaiser Wilhelm is going to abdicate the throne, and there's going to come a new power now, or a new government, the Weimar Republic, right? And so yeah. Okay, post World War I, what you find now in Germany, there's hyperinflation and political extremism happening now in Germany, because the Germans lost a lot of money in the war, and even that peace treaty now, the Treaty of Versailles, was a very bad, nasty treaty against the Germans, because everyone was accusing the Germans of instigating this war. They are saying, all the countries, all the nations are saying, it is Germany which is an aggressor in this war. So they have to pay. So Germany lost a lot of territories. They lost land in this war, and they were forced to pay the reparations, all the damages of this war. So they lost. So everyone was watching this, and really it was a painful situation in Germany. And now you have this hyperinflation. So meaning now the money power is very weak inside Germany. And then you have, you will, when the money is weak, you will have poverty, you will have unemployment, all those things. At the same time, you have these political extremist groups. There's a lot of these pockets, people trying to grab power inside Germany. So there was a lot of chaos. And then you have this party called Social Democratic Party, SPD. SPD was the largest party in the early 1920s. SPD was leading the revolution and founded the Weimar Republic. You have other left or center-left parties like Catholic Center Party, and you have a Communist Party of Germany. So what we are doing here, we just want to understand, just to go to details a little bit in the history of Germany, so we can try to pick up some similarities with our history. So we're just familiarizing ourselves with this history. So yeah, so the SPD, this Social Democratic Party, you can think of a party like the Democrats today in America. So they are center, they are left-leaning sort of kind of a party. right? And then you have other parties like Catholic Center Party, Communist Party. Communist Party is a far, far left party, you know. So Catholic Center is a centrist party, center leaning, you know, those kinds of parties, right? Then you have this man, Frederick Ebert. So Frederick Ebert is going to be the first president from 1919 to 1925. So we are talking about the Weimar Republic. The monarch has been removed. Now we have the government of the people. So the people are going to elect this president, Frederick Ebert, right? And then is a social democratic party is on the SPD party, and he's a moderate. We need to note that. So he's very committed in democracy. He wants to restore order in Germany, and he will work to crush leftist groups who were anarchists and extremists. So even on this in his own party as a moderate, like centrist leaning left, but he's going to work toward crushing these leftist groups because these are extremists. They are too left, right? And he's trying to put together, restore Germany to make it a functional state. This is his mission. He's going to try to unite with other right-wing parties to restore peace. So he's trying to work, as a moderate, he's trying to work with both sides of the people to try to bring together, to restore people, to bring them together so that they can restore Germany. All right. So, and then in 1924, you have the monetary and the political stability being restored now. So things are getting better. Remember, they had this problem before. Things are getting better now. People enjoy prosperity now. They will enjoy this prosperity for 5 years, right? It is sometimes called, this period is called the golden 20s. So this is when money, the buying power was good in Germany now. Economy starts to kick in, right? So after that, in 1925, you have these Locarno treaties to restore relations with neighbors. So they are trying to restore Germany. They are trying to do by all means, even to try to sort out relations with their neighbors, because remember, everyone is blaming Germany at this point for what is happening in Europe, right? So, but now we see them restoring these relations, and they are promising not to go to war again, all those type of things. This is happening under Frederick Ebert, right? And in 1926, then Germany is going to join the League of Nations. So the League of Nations is similar like United Nations today. So this group of countries that are coming together to make sure that there's not going to be war anymore, right? So this is this effort to try to make sure that these wars are stopped. So yeah, so this is Frederick Ebert. He would die in 1925. He's gonna be sick. He couldn't take care of his health, and then he's gonna die. Now we have Paul von Hindenburg. So Paul von Hindenburg, he was an independent. So he calls himself an independent, uh, but right-leaning politician, you know. So he's gonna start the office as president 12 May 1925. So now he's gonna continue with the work of Frederick Ebert. But this one is a different guy now. This one is a right-leaning politician. This one, and Edinburgh wanted a nationalist right cabinet without the Centre Party and SDP. So we're going to discuss a little bit about this, the structure, how the government is structured there in Germany, so we can understand what is going on here. But this guy, he wants to change this old government. He's coming with his new government, and he wants this nationalist right cabinet, because the previous one, we know Ebert was an SDP. He was a moderate but left-leaning, right? So this one is coming to change this. So this is what I want us to note in this history. That this history, the theme of this history, if I can say, put it that way, or what we want to get as we go along, is to see that there's this change from a left-wing government to a right-wing government. So this is what is happening in this history. Right from the beginning, as we saw, the first president was a left-leaning politician, but now we are having a right-leaning president now. You see, because even when the left, this SPD party took office, but there was resentment. You know, there was a strong resentment from the political right. You know, because they were blaming the Democrats. They were blaming the Democrats on how they were governing the country, particularly that treaty of 1919, the Treaty of Versailles. That treaty, because that treaty is the cause of the problems which are happening in Germany now. So the people didn't like that, and even for this party that was ruling the president, they were expecting more from him, you know, to try to resolve those issues, or I don't know how, or maybe even to try to fight back that treaty, something like that. But the German army was weak, you know. So even Ebert, he did try. In fact, he asked the general to say, look, before they even signed the treaty, he asked the generals, look, what do we do? Can we not sign this treaty maybe and go back to war, something like that? What's the situation of the war? What's the conditions? And the generals, they told him, I know, the army is depleted. There's no way. We cannot hold anything. And so when hearing that, he said, let's sign the treaty. And then, but he was blamed for that. That how come you signed this treaty, you know? It's unfair, it's weakness. So these national political rights nationalists, they were always having this resentment, you know, something similar like you hear today when these people are blaming the Democrats that there's this thing the people are saying, the incompetency, you know, the country is run by stupid people. We heard this from Donald Trump, right? So it's a similar situation here, something similar. Now we have Paul van Hindenburg running the country as president now. He's got his plans. He wants to change this cabinet, because if you are a president, you are responsible in influencing the cabinet, you know. So we're going to talk about this. So it says here, he turned to former Chancellor Franz von Papen to achieve his goal. So he's going to come to this man now, to Franz Papen, and say to him, listen, I want you to make this cabinet for me. And I want a nationalist right cabinet, you know. So this guy is gonna be the architect of this cabinet, this Papen. The cabinet was presidential and not parliamentary since 1930. We're gonna talk about that. What does it mean? The cabinet is presidential now, not parliamentary. Okay, are we still together? Can someone confirm that?
Yes, like
Thank you. Right. Yeah, someone is breaking the. I don't get who's talk. Yeah, someone is breaking. I don't get what. Hello? Someone talking?
It's me, like I was just confirming that we can hear you.
All right, thank you. Okay, and then we have the Great Depression of October 1929. Remember, we said things are going well now in Germany. Since 1924, the economy has recovered. It has started this golden 20s, this golden age, right? And people are progressing now. The economy is booming, the culture, the art, and everything. The economy. Here comes this Great Depression in 1929. The Great Depression of October 1929 severely impacted Germany's 10 years progress. And then now there's going to be unemployment, political unrest, that led to the collapse of Chancellor Hermann Muller's Chancellor Hermann Muller's grand coalition and the beginning of the presidential cabinets. Okay, let's have a look at this. What is this presidential cabinet? Okay, I think we are coming closer to this now. So just picture this. We had an old government, it was a left-leaning. Now we have a new government, it's a right-leaning, and they want to change the cabinet and come with their cabinet. So this is what they are trying to do here. And they are going to fine-tune some other things, right? To make sure everything goes their way. So let's talk about this cabinet called Reich Cabinet of National Salvation. This is the cabinet now. It's a cabinet around 1930s. Remember, we were just discussing the Great Depression, and now they are trying to consolidate things. They are trying to put the government together to try to stabilize things there. And then they are trying to fix this cabinet at the same time. So the cabinet governed on okay, we are trying to discuss now this cabinet. What is this? Remember, sorry, there was these buzzwords we always hear here, presidential cabinet. So we had something called presidential cabinet, which was not there before. Before it was a parliamentary cabinet, but now there's something called presidential cabinet now. What's the difference? The cabinet is going to be governed on the basis of emergency powers granted to the president in Article 48 of the Weimar Constitution, rather than through a majority vote in the Reichstag. Okay, the Reichstag is the parliament, is the lower house in the Congress in our language today. So we're gonna see the structure right now just to show how the structure is working there in Germany. It's a similar structure, but there are some differences with this American structure. So you have this guy, Papen. Remember who's Papen? Papen was that person that was hired by the president to build this cabinet, this former chancellor that was called just to engineer or to build this cabinet, because the president now, he wants a new cabinet. Papen was certain that Hitler and the Nazi Party had to be included in this cabinet. But Hitler had previously turned down the position of vice chancellor. So Papen, with the help of Hindenburg's son, Oscar, persuaded Hindenburg to appoint Hitler as chancellor. So, okay, let us have a look at this structure. This is a Weimar Republic government structure. Like we said, similar to what Americans use today. You have a legislative branch. So in the legislative branch, you have a Reichsrat, that's an upper house, and then you have a Reichstag, that's a lower house. But somehow here, the people who have power is the lower house. I don't know how it works. Somehow here, the people who have more power is the lower house. The upper house has got limited powers somehow. All right, then you have the executive branch. The executive branch, it's a president, right? This is the head of the state and is elected by the popular vote, right? And then you have the chancellor. So this is where the difference is. You have a president and then you have a chancellor. Chancellor is the head of the government, and he's the one who's responsible to form the government, to form the government structures. So this cabinet we are talking about, the cabinet is a group of around 10 people, if I'm not mistaken, 10 people in this cabinet, and it's the chancellor who's responsible, who's in charge of this cabinet, right? So this is this subtle difference they have. You have a president and then you have a chancellor, right? So the president is the one who's gonna appoint the chancellor, and but the chancellor is the one now who's gonna be running this whole thing of a government. But here at the end of the world, we just have one person, a president, and the president is the head of the state, and then he's doing all this. But here it is separated somehow. So today, when we talk about the cabinet is for the president, like Donald Trump now. Donald Trump, the first thing he does when he gets to power is to pick his cabinet, to make his cabinet. Same thing here, but somehow the chancellor is the one that is going to do that work. The president is just there for signatures, those kinds of things, you know. All right. I didn't. And then you have the judicial. It's the same as we have in America. You have the Supreme Court, and then you have the courts of the states, state courts. You know, those things. All right. So just remember that we have a president, and then you have a chancellor. Right. So we are still talking about this cabinet because these people want to change this cabinet because this cabinet, you know, it was serving the previous government. And the previous government, we know it was this SPD party, this left leaning party. Now we have a right wing or right leaning party. Okay, they are going to form the government. Remember, Papen said, you see now as we are building this government, we need to put Hitler as part, to make Hitler part of this. So who's Hitler now? So Hitler, he has just, we know him, he was a soldier, a nobody, came back from war, and then he joined this party called a DAP party. Is this a national right wing or a workers' party, you know? So he joined this party, and as soon as he joins this party, I mean, he's going to be recognized as someone who's having a potential in this party, and he's going to quickly rise into leadership of that party, this DAP party, right? And then later they are going to change the name to this thing now, NSDAP party. So we know it as the Nazi party. So this Nazi party started small. There were other, you know, right-wing groups. It's one of the right-wing groups, but they are going to quickly rise into power now. When? Because you will remember that in maybe we're going to talk about this at the end, I think, but maybe we can talk about it now. 1923, November 9, Hitler is going to try, you know, a coup, but that coup is going to fail. A coup, remember, a coup is when we try to take a government by force, you know, or by arms or by other means, but it's going to fail. But soon after that, Hitler is going to be a relevant person now. He's going to be well known because of these activities. But I think we have something to read concerning what we are saying now. What we wanted to show here is now they are forming the government, and they have to make sure that they put Hitler in this coalition government. Remember, the old government had a coalition as well, right? Because it's not just one party. It's you know, it's several right-wing parties. Even before, you had a couple of, you know, left-wing parties. So if you form your government, you need to make sure that you mix these people, these parties. These parties must be represented, you know. So this is what is happening here. It's a coalition of two parties mostly. It's the Nazi party and it's this national conservative German National People's Party, DNVP. So they're coming together now to form this government. All right. Okay, the nationalists underestimated Hitler in this way. It says here, in brokering the appointment of Hitler as the Reich Chancellor, because remember what we read. Sometimes in the past, they tried to make Hitler a vice chancellor, and Hitler declined that offer. He said, no, I don't want it. He wants to be a chancellor, you know, because he wants to have a position of influence in this government. So now there's no other way. They have to put him in, and then they have to, you know. So Papen had, it says here, in brokering the appointment of Hitler as Reichschancellor, Papen had sought to control Hitler by limiting the number of Nazi ministers in the cabinet. Okay, let's put Hitler, make him chancellor, so that we will limit the Nazi members, because we're going to say, Hitler, we've given you this big position, right? This high position. So we need to limit the Nazi members in this cabinet. So now they are thinking, we're isolating Hitler. So it's going to be easy to control Hitler now because he's by himself. Actually, there were two others. So I think three or two people in Nazi members in this cabinet. So they think, no, there are not so many, we can manage them. All right. Further, Alfred Hugenberg, the head of the DNVP, so this other party now that they are making collision with, was enticed in joining the cabinet by being given the economic and agricultural portfolios for both the Reich and Prussia, with the expectation that Hugenberg would be a counterweight to Hitler and would be useful in controlling him. So they even put this experienced man, they know that let's make sure we put Hugenberg here to make sure that we control Hitler, we handle Hitler, you see. So this is their strategy. They're making sure that we're going to put Hitler in check, right? All right. So initially, the Hitler cabinet, like its immediate predecessors, ruled through presidential decrees written by the cabinet and signed by Hindenburg. All right. So remember we said since 1930 there was a change. Now these cabinets are ruled by these presidential decrees. It's no longer a parliamentary decree, it's a presidential decree. So in other words, the president, what they are doing now, the style of ruling now is to use these emergency decrees to push their agenda. So this is similar like what we see when we see Donald Trump using these executive orders. He's trying to bypass the Congress, right? With these orders, right? So it's a similar thing we see here when we talk about presidential decrees or presidential cabinets. So, because normally any matter would have to go to the lower house, the Reichstag here, or this Congress, for the majority of the people to vote or to rule on those issues. But something similar, something different is happening since 1930s, since this person we call Hindenburg, Paul von Hindenburg, things are operating differently. But still, they are not that bad. But again, you can see something is starting to happen here. So it says here, when Hitler come in now, Hitler as well is going to be a chancellor now. We know he's going to be appointed a chancellor. When was it? 1933, right? And then things are running as they were running, and Hitler is coming to power. But look what happens now. However, the Enabling Act of 1933, passed 2 months after Hitler took office, gave the cabinet the power to make the laws without legislative consent or Hindenburg's signature. So because of this act now, enabling act of 1933, things are going to operate differently now. We no longer need a signature from the president now or the legislature. We don't need all of those consent. We things now. So Hitler now as a chancellor can just sign everything into law by himself because of this enabling act of 1933. We're going to have a look at this. So in effect, the power to rule by decree was vested in Hitler, and for all intents and purposes, it made him a dictator now. So because of this enabling act of 1933, things are operating differently now. What happened? Let's talk about the Reichstag fire decree. We are still in 1933. So this decree, it's a decree issued by German President Paul von Hindenburg on the advice of Chancellor Adolf Hitler on 28 February 1933 in immediate response to the Reichstag fire. So there was a fire happened here in I think it happened in 27 February. And the Reichstag is the parliament, is the building, is the House of Representatives. Someone set it on fire deliberately. And then there was this scandal now, this fire, this disaster. And now Hitler is going to go to the president, Paul von Hindenburg, and say, look, we need to fix things here. We need a law, right? That so that we will have control over issues. Things are getting out of hand. Is using this fire now as a pretext to gain this power. And this is what is happening here on the 28th February. The decree nullified many of the key civil liberties of German citizens. So this decree now is taking away there are many rights of the people. Because remember, we give your rights to the government promises to protect you. So because now, because of this attack, Hitler is saying, look, the state is what is this? We are in danger. We are vulnerable. So we need to tighten up things. We need to, so that we can preserve your liberties, we need to just give us your liberties back for a while so that we can sort this situation. So this is what happens here. With the Nazis in powerful positions in the German government, the decree was used as the legal basis for the imprisonment of anyone considered to be opponents of the Nazis and to suppress publications not considered friendly to the Nazi cause. So now Hitler is taking power using this pretext of this fire. He's taking all civil liberties now, and he's rearranging things in the government using this decree now to override a lot of legislative powers that may have blocked him. And so now he's even using this power now to imprison people. So he's imprisoning people now. If you are an opponent, we put you to prison, right? If you are suppressing, or what is this? If you are any publication, so the press, even the press now, is under pressure now, because if you are not considered friendly to the Nazis, so we have to deal with you. So, when I'm reading this, as I was reading this, it's like I'm watching the news today. I know we are not there yet, like in terms of, but we are here anyway. It's just it happens in a different way. This is what we are trying to see it. But this idea of going after opponents, this is the language of Donald Trump, right? And suppressing the publications or the media or the press, those kinds of things. This is what is happening on the news even now. It's just that it's happening not in that scale, maybe, but these things are brewing as we speak. So it's the same as it was happening in Germany. As soon as they took power, this is what they began to do, right? So restructuring of the government. So we're still talking about Hitler. When Hitler came to power, the cabinet consisted of the chancellor, the vice chancellor, and the heads of the 10 Reich ministries, right? Between 1993 and 1941, since new Reich ministries were established. So it's always been like this, okay? Now, the cabinet was further enlarged by the addition of several Reich ministers without portfolio and by other officials such as the commanders-in-chief of the armed services, who were granted the rank and authority of the Reich ministers, but without the title, right? So you see what is happening now. Hitler is hiring other people, is enlarging this ministry, this cabinet. He's got other portfolios now, right? With no title. So we see, I mean, this thing, when I see this, it reminds me of people like Elon Musk, you see. Because Elon Musk, who is Elon Musk? Elon Musk is not a minister. He's not in any ministry there, right? He's not in the cabinet. He's somewhere wandering around there, in the White House. Because it says here, the cabinet further enlarged by the addition of several Reich ministers without portfolio, because Donald Trump will say, okay, Elon Musk is going to be in charge of DOGE, this Department of Government Efficiency. What is this? But this thing has no portfolio, something which is just coming, and you don't know where it's coming from. So this is Hitler. It's Hitler style. This is what Donald Trump is doing. And he's trying to rearrange things the way he wants them to go, right? Without title. So like now, we don't even know what Elon Musk is doing there. Because recently he's saying, no, Elon Musk is not part of Doge. He's not in charge of Doge. He's an advisor of Doge. So he's changing the language now because some things may follow Elon Musk if he's really part of that. So anyway, so I think we've already discussed this the Beer Hall Putsch. This is this failed coup in November 9, 1923. The putsch brought Hitler to the attention of the German nation for the first time, and generated front page headlines in the newspapers around the world. So like we said, Hitler really, no one knew about Hitler until he tried this coup, and then he was arrested. And then after this 24-day trial, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. but he would stay 9 months in prison. And we know in prison, this is when he wrote, what is that? Is this a biography or a manifesto? Mein Kampf, My Struggle. So he wrote that document, that book. This is when now he will outline, it's a memoir, I don't know, what do you call it? He will outline all his ideas, everything about Hitler that you need to know is in this book. His doctrine, his beliefs, and everything. So, and then now when he comes out of prison, he realized that, hey, this coup is not working, right? This thing of trying to take the power by power or by arms or by force, it's not working. So remember what our title was saying. It was saying we are trying to explain democracy, the fall of democracy. So because now Hitler tried to collapse the government, but somehow these organs of the state, it was found that they are robust. They could not be broken because Hitler was arrested. People died in that day. Roughly 2,000 people died, including officers, some of his members, Nazi members, and Hitler was taken to jail. And, so he realized in jail that, no, I can't work like this. It's not going to work. I need to change. This is when now he would come back out of jail and change his strategy now and become a real serious politician now. This is what he's trying to do. So he's trying to get into the system and work with the rules of the system. So he's gonna come in now as a politician, and then he's gonna take off now. He's gonna be well known. He's gonna be this politician. We've already described how he's gonna come in, and this Nazi party by 1932, this Nazi party is the biggest party in Germany. Remember before, in the earlier days, it was the SPD party, that Social Democratic Party. Now, tables have changed now. This Nazi party is resonating with the people, and the people are following Hitler. This is why those politicians, even in the right-wing party now, like the one we've discussed, they were worried about Hitler now, because you can see this is an extremist. Yes, we are all right-wingers, but this one, this Hitler, you can see this is not good. It's bad news. So everyone could see, but they made a mistake, a fatal mistake. I mean, even to accommodate him that way. And then they thought they were going to control him. But later they would find out that Hitler is bigger than them. He's going to take over the party, take over the government. He's going to take over the government. And that fire incident is going to be a catalyst, accelerate his work. And by the time they knew it, by the time you get to 1933 to 1941, Hitler is in power. And by that time, he was operating openly as a dictator. All right, it says here, once released in prison, Hitler redirected his focus towards obtaining power through legal means, yes, rather than by revolution or force, and accordingly change his tactics and further developing the Nazi propaganda. So he's going to use propaganda. this is information war. He's gonna become a politician. He's gonna work inside this national right-wing party government. He's gonna work inside them. He's gonna be accepted there. They are going to form a coalition with him. And little they know that Hitler is here to take over everything. So the conclusion, we are talking about the right-wing National Conservative Party failing to put Hitler in check. So the duty, the duty of the Republican, what is this? The duty of the National Conservative parties. We are saying it is them that need to protect this democracy. So remember, let's put it today. You have the Democrats and you have the Republicans. So the Democrats, we know, they are on the left, you know, they are the good side. They are on the good side, if I can put it that way. So even the dictators, because the dictators somehow find a right-wing environment conducive for their schemes. So even the dictators, if they want to work, they like to work with the right-wing parties, because you know the right-wing party, it always have this, you know, this nationalistic idea they have, this conservative nationalistic idea, because this is racism, right? So the dictators, if you're a dictator, you would want to work with this right wing, you know. Somehow, I don't know, but it happens. Dictators love this right wing party, and they flourish there very well, you know. And then you get into that system, and then you mushroom into that system. So we are saying the Democrats, they are already, even now, if you listen to their ideologies, it's the ideologies that you would agree with them, you know, inclusion, they are not nationalistic, you know, they are for globalization, they are not nationalists, right? And yeah, you know, so, but these national right conservatives, they are nationalistic, and they're full of conspiracies, you know. So if you're coming with this agenda, this propaganda, it flourishes there very well there with you know, with these right wing base. So the point is the duty of the Republican Party to put in check Donald Trump, just as it was their what you call the duty. It was their duty to put Hitler in check, but they failed. They underestimated Hitler, and Hitler came into their circles and he took over the party. By the time they opened their eyes, Hitler is a dictator. And so I think we see similar things happening now. They accepted Donald Trump, came into their ranks. I don't know, I'm not sure what they thought in the beginning. Maybe they thought they were going to groom him and make him a Republican, because Trump is not a Republican. Trump is Trump. We know him, but he came in there, you know, with his ideas, this Trumpism, this MAGA. So now he's taking over everything. Now it's his party now. Just like Hitler, he came in with his Nazi party, and then 1933 onwards, is consolidated everything into one party. There's one party, and it's a Nazi party moving forward. So this is what is happening here. It is not much to say. It's not much to say when we say democracy is fallen. We are talking about the structures, at least in our history. The structures are still here. Elections are still continuing, you know, and everything is still functioning. It's just that you need to work around the system, or you need to, if you want to be a dictator, you're gonna have to somehow blend with the system, use their legal means to get into power. This is what Hitler did, using the democratic means of getting into power. And when you are in there, I don't know, we don't know what you are going to do once you're in there. But Hitler, once he gained that power, he changed everything into something else. Today, we are still waiting to see what really is going to happen. But already even now, we see similar tactics, only just in a different scale, because we are here in 2025. But we see Trump signing a lot of these executive orders, and everything is called an emergency at the border, right? All those things are done to bypass the Congress, just like these right-wing nationalists in the time of Hitler. They were doing the same thing to try to bypass the Reichstag, and then, then to try to bypass the Congress. So they will call these emergency decrees. So this presidential, what did we say? This presidential cabinet. So this cabinet is reporting not so much from the Congress now. It's reporting much from the president. So it's getting orders direct from the president. And when you look at Donald Trump, you'll see this is what he's trying to do. Though all the organs of the United States are still robust, it's difficult for him, but you can see he's trying to force things, because he wants to set himself up a king there, and he really wants to be a dictator. So, am I making sense? Anyone who has a comment, a question, anything? Am I making sense today?
Yes, very sensitive. It's very, very sensitive information. I'm going to send something like my thoughts on the Zoom platform based on what you have already taught. Very crucial. Propaganda is imminent. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So that history of Hitler, it's, I think it's very close to what is happening now. So yeah. So the aim was to try to draw these similarities or maybe differences, just to pinpoint that it's not so much about when we say democracy is fallen, or the fall of democracy democracy will continue to work. The elections are going to be held every 4 years. But when we look at Hitler, Hitler abolished, dissolved all of those things once he got to power. That was a different day. He abolished everything once he got to power. Right? So, but for him to get to power, he had to use these very organs of the state. Otherwise, he tried a coup, didn't work, just like Donald Trump, he tried it January 6th, didn't work, but you're going to have to use these tools, the instruments of the democracy, of this democracy, if you want to get to power. And he did get into power, but moving forward, we don't know what he's going to do or how this whole thing is going to look like. So yeah, any comments, trying to see here. To see if we can. Yeah, I'm trying to. All right, if there's no question for the day, if there's no comments, I think we can close with a word of prayer. So I wanted to all right, so I don't know how to get. Okay, so we can close with a word of prayer. Can anyone hear me? I'm not even sure now if I'm audible or.
We can hear you, Lucky. No, what is happening here? Okay.
Host, can you help me here? I'm trying to see if I can stop recording if it's happening here now.